Hi everyone, my name is Gabriel and this is the Hour of the Raven, your channel for everything Ravenloft, RPG, Dungeons and Dragons, and horror.
Today, we will explore the domain of Lamordia, a domain marked by its extreme climate and by the skeptical, reserved, rationalist, and scientific mindset of its population. Before we begin, a brief clarification and comments. After a long period, we finally return to the core of Ravenloft, after spending 3 years covering the domains of the Sea of Sorrows, as well as the domain of Bloodspoor and the Zeretian cluster. Before we resume our expedition through the most famous and well-known domains of the Demiplane of Dread, I would like to express my gratitude to the Fraternity of Shadows and the entire Ravenloft fan community around the world that is dedicated to keeping the setting alive in the netbooks. The videos about these domains, so interesting and rich, could not be made without the valuable articles that expand on the Gazetteer's proposal and describe these lands in detail, masterfully and cohesively integrating them with the dark and fantastic of Ravenloft and adding layers to the existing lore. Many have been clamoring for a return to the core lands, and we couldn't have arrived at a more opportune time for Lamordia, with the release of Guillermo del Toro's new version of Frankenstein. It is also important to remember that this video will focus on the Lamordia of the classic Ravenloft setting, and will consider the events and characters that existed in the domain before the reboot carried out by the Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. At the end of my video coverage of the Lamordia of the classic Ravenloft setting, I will make some considerations and comparisons with the new version of Lamordia in the Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. Are you ready? After surviving yet another shipwreck, we swam in the frozen sea until we reached the frozen Isle of Agony. Amidst a desolate landscape and a blizzard, we searched for shelter in these lands, where we could dry off and protect ourselves from the cold. We are on the verge of hypothermia, and we can't find any shelter or help when suddenly the ground collapses beneath our feet. We fall into the underground, having fallen through a hole and opening in the rocky surface. The network of caves is a natural shelter against the elements, and we are lucky to have found this place to take refuge. We soon discovered that this network of caves was previously inhabited, and there are indications that it is someone's home. In one of the caves, we find bookshelves and even a brazier. Whoever inhabits these caves seems obsessed with seeking knowledge about the region and its inhabitants. As we warm ourselves near an improvised fire, we cannot help but read the notes and records of its mysterious absent resident and discover more about the nation of Lamordia and its inhabitants.
Hour of the Raven.
Lamordia is a domain of Ravenloft conceived as an example of scientific horror and the dangers of reason dissociated from morality, the boundless pursuit for knowledge, and the hubris of the human intellect. Its greatest and main inspiration is the novel Frankenstein from Mary Shelley, and it explores a version of the Promethean scientist archetype. The domain is perfect for exploring themes such as the horror of extreme rationalism, guilt and responsibility for knowledge and creation, and the intellectual and emotional isolation. In Lamordia, fear does not come solely from the unknown, but from the horror of what man can do when he believes that everything can be explained, controlled, or recreated, and the light of knowledge reveals even deeper horrors. The domain is situated in the Renaissance era and is one of the most culturally advanced domains in the core of the Land of the Mists. The cultural inspiration of this domain drawn from Germany, Austria, the Netherlands, and Switzerland. The Lamordia domain is in the northwestern region of the Ravenloft core, the continent where most of the domains that compose the setting are clustered. Lamordia borders Demolu to the south, Falkovnia and Darkon to the east, and the Sea of Sorrows to the west, very close to the island of the Mees. Lamordia's climate is temperate, but is marked by characteristic seasons, with very hot and humid summers and harsh cold winters. Its communities are sometimes completely cut off during the harsh winter and need to prepare to survive these trials. Lamordia's geography divides it in distinct landscapes. To the east of the domain is the mountain range called Scalaptia, or the Sleeping Beast by the locals. These mountains are gnarled peaks covered in pine trees, and although they are home to many natural predators and extreme temperatures, the area is sparsely inhabited by various hunters and miners. To the west, beyond the mountains, lies the lowlands, alluvial plains, where the delta of the Cubworth River flows into a swampy, flooded region called the Heat of Feverish Tears, which during the summer heat is overtaken by swarms of mosquitoes. The plain and coastal terrain rises as one moves north, and large cliffs and escarpments are formed. The Black River crosses Lamordia at this point and flows into the Sea of Sorrows in a cove between these cliffs. In the far north, the coast fragments into numerous small islands in a chain, which are called Finja in the local language, or the Finger. Navigation between these islands is very difficult, as there are shoals, swallows, and choking seaweed between them, and most ships need to go around the Finger and cross near the island of the Mees to get around. During winter, the sea between these islands freezes, allowing those willing to brave the ice to cross on foot. In summer, at low tide, it is also possible to walk along paths through channels in the dark mudflats that connect these islands. These islands are the subject of legends and folklore among the people of Lamordia, being reputed as the home of pirates, specters, werewolves, and other monstrosities. The largest and most feared of these islands is the Isle of Agony, a desolate region where a rocky peak rises from the sea, and where the sound of the wind can be heard constantly like a lament. From its mountain, the underground river Rhineborn emerges and flows toward the Sea of Sorrows. Lamordia has only two paved roads, the Watman roads that connects Landerdorf to the city of Rivalis in Darkon, and the Timor road, which connects Naurfurstenberg with Leka in Falkovnia. The rest of the kingdom is crisscrossed by small dirty roads, which are covered in snow in winter, and become potholed and muddy in summer. During the winter, travelers must use dog sleds or skits to reach other communities. The vegetation covering Lamordia is primarily coniferous, with pines, larches, and silver firs dotting the mountain range of the Sleeping Beast. In the lower region, oaks, beeches, and walnut trees can also be found. The plains and heaths fit various ground vegetation and underground, as well as willow and swamp birch. Lamordia is home to several toxic plants, which may also have medicinal uses. Among them, the Blitzescap mushroom stands out, whose spores produce a paralyzing poison. The fauna of Lamordia is typical of a temperate climate and includes deer, moose, and wild boar, as well as other beavers and weasels. During the long winters, hungry wolves, lynxes, wildcats, brown bears, and badgers may attack humans. Surprisingly, Lamordia has very low number of reports of supernatural creatures, such as the undead. However, there is a large number of aberrant creatures, amalgams of more than one species, automatons and constructs, whose origins is pointed more towards the laboratories of unscrupulous scientists and natural accidents than supernatural causes. The population of Lamordia is almost entirely human and composed of natives of these lands. Although it is recognized as a center of production, technology, and knowledge, its hostile climate deters foreigners, and most of the aristocracy of the core, seeking university education, are attracted by the amenities and culture of Dimolu. Lamordians are usually slender, of medium height, with well-defined marked faces. Lamordians have pale skin, but many develop flushed reddish faces after being battered by the frigid winds of their winter. Their eyes are usually bright, in shades of blue or green, and their hair ranges from blonde to dark brown. Men prefer medium-length hair, usually tied in a short ponytail, and avoid beards and mustaches, but favor sideburns. Women wear their hair long, usually secured with pins or a pair of braids. Unlike their neighbors from Dimolu, Lamordians value sober, unadorned clothing, generally wearing garments in black, white, or shades of gray. Men wear loose-colored shirts, vests, and trousers. Large leather coats and overcoats are worn in winter, and scarves and pointed hats are common among the wealthier. Although they don't wear jewelry, some like to use canes and pocket watches. Lamordian women dress simply in heavy woolen dresses with long sleeves. Most women wear white bonnets and hats, and in cold weather, leather and fur cloaks are worn for warmth. The Lamordian language has a guttural and somewhat unpleasant sound. Its alphabet and written language have compound words and idiomatic expressions, and complex rules of tense and gender. Although proud of their native language, most Lamordians learn foreign language for trade purpose. The Lamordians pride themselves on their education, and virtually the entire population is literate. From an early age, children are educated by their parents, not only in reading and writing, but also in practical matters and in learning crafts. Most of the Lamordians live on their craft as artisans. Their extreme climate is hostile to agriculture, and they rely on trade to receive food from Falkovnia and Darkon. Some make a living from livestock, hunting and the fur trade, but most follow traditions and artisanal crafts, often joining guilds that play an important role and influence in society. There are no Lamordians living in extreme poverty, and everyone manages to earn some income from their trade. They value honesty, hard work, and finesse of their products, as well as tradition and renown. Although pragmatic and sober in their behavior, Lamordians are quite romantic and passionate in their relationships. Their approach to relationship is quite respectful, and couples exchange gifts, take walks, and engage in activities considered innocent during courtship. Men rarely marry before establishing themselves in their trade. Lamordia is quite egalitarian, and women perform practically equally with men in conducting their trade and commerce. The Lamordian population has a strong sense of community and unity, perhaps due to the isolation of their communities during the harsh winters, and they often gather on festivals for group meals and the consumption of beverages. Lamordian cuisine is hearty and generally centered around pork, although geese, deer, and other animals are also consumed. To foreigners, their cuisine is considered heavy, with dishes such as blood pudding, sausages, pork knuckle, and sauerkraut. They also consume quite a bit of beer, wine, and liquor with their meals. The architecture of Lamordia is not very inspired, and its buildings generally adopt the same style. The buildings are 2 or 3 stories high, constructed with heavy beams and bricks, and plastered in white or cream. Thick thatch covers the steep triangular roofs, while geometric and floral arrangements adorn the door and window frames. The residents have a strong sense of cleanliness and organization, and even public spaces are always well maintained. The population of Lamordia is guided by pragmatic, rational, and stoic behavior, and views with suspicion those who value frivolity or preach fanaticism. These values cause the Lamordians to have a distrustful view of magic, and they tend to be skeptical about the existence of supernatural forces or creatures. They recognize the limits of their knowledge, but value reason and rationality, and that which is beyond their comprehension is simply something that has not yet been studied by science. Magic users, in general, receive a hostile reception and are seen as reckless people who deal with what they do not understand, like savages playing with gunpowder. Their materialistic and pragmatic outlook also distance the Lamordians from religion, and most of the population has no belief or faith whatsoever. Their view of the cosmos is heavily influenced by academic studies, which refer to reality as the great mechanism, governed by rational and scientific laws and principles. Most of the aristocracy and scholars reject the existence of gods and believe that the universe was created by a cosmic accident, with the mist being a primordial force of creation and destruction, existing within a great orb that separates us from the void. Among the common people, most believe that gods existed, but that these divine forces only acted in the creation of the universe and then left the great mechanism functioning without their interference. The government of Lamordia is an hereditary aristocracy with reasonably independent republican communities. Since its emergence from the mist, the leadership of Lamordia has befallen Baron Wilhelm von Albecker, who has been in power for over 7 decades. Today, he is quite old and soon to be succeeded by his only surviving heir, Greta von Albecker. His rule is light, and he does not impose many laws or rules on his subordinates, but he always demands the payment of taxes due to him. During the long winters, when the communities of Lamordia become incommunicable and isolated, the Baron also becomes inaccessible, and it's up to the local leaders to solve their problems. The leaders of these communities are called Schlut, or mayor, and they act in local government, and mainly as representative of the guilds for trade with other communities or foreigners. This mayor is elected by the Schultebot, a small local council that appoints the mayor every 2 years. The members of this council are called Staustrot, and they have 6-year terms. The members of this council are elected by vote of the male landowners of the community, and they elect candidates from among the same voting members. This council can summon the mayor to account and votes on all civic decisions unrelated to commerce, from important issues to trivial situations. There are not many national laws in Lamordia, with most regulations being only valid locally within the communities. The lack of precise criminal legislation leaves considerable leeway and power to the mayor, who sometimes uses the captain of the guard to persecute those who bother him. Only the captain of the guard are career soldiers, with the rest of the city militia being young volunteers who serve for a period of 2 years. Baron von Albecker maintains some military forces to defend the kingdom and watch over his subjects, with some troops keeping watch on the border. Lamordia's relationship with its neighbors is essentially mercantile. Although they have warred in the past, Lamordia and Falkovnia have established a lucrative trading partnership, and a lasting peace has been established with shipment of grain and food to Lamordia and the return of excellent quality weapons to Falkovnia. The islands of the Sea of Sorrows, Darkon and Demonlieu, are also important trading partners, although the Lamordians look down on Darkon's use of magic and Demonlieu's frivolous culture. Lamordia's economy is thriving, largely due to its skill in trade. Its agricultural production is insufficient to meet its needs, and it relies on trade with other nations to supply its communities. Lamordia has a significant fishing industry, and numerous whaling ships exploit the hunting and trade of these animals. There is considerable livestock production, and Lamordia has made a fortune from fur trade. Its main economic activity, however, is the skill of its artisans, whose work is known for its quality and innovation. Local artisans produce some of the finest handcrafted goods in the core, including furniture, clocks, tools, weapons, textiles, leather goods, carriages, and ships. Lamordian guilds are committed to perfection and standardization, and value the efficiency and usefulness of their products, rather than adornment and frivolity. In the caves of the Isle of Agony, we warmed our bodies around the fire while reading about Lamordia and taking shelter from the storm. Outside, the blizzard continues, and all we can do is wait in this mysterious lair. Search among the countless books in the place. We found scribed notes from its mysterious inhabitant, who seems to be doing in-depth research of the past of these lands. Subscribe to this channel, turn on notifications, and let's explore the history of Lamordia.